I'm Matt Landau, and this is Unlocked, Season 6, Magic Zones. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, a best-in-class property care and operations platform. Today we're bringing you part 2 of our conversation with Carl Shepard, the co-founder of HomeAway. In part 1 last week, we got a really solid understanding of how the online vacation rental movement has evolved from the moment Carl and his partner Brian Sharples first bought VRBO back in the day. But this week gets into the fun stuff. Where's the opportunity? How to build brand? What deep trends should you be keeping an eye on as they evolve? Let's get into this.
What's going to happen in the future is that you've now got an industry that's so large, it's naive of us to think that it isn't going to further fragment, meaning and specialize and become niche-y. I see a future where there are going to be websites and organizing principles that let like-minded homeowners group together. There's one that I'm aware of that helps the military families travel. It's a great concept. I didn't realize until I talked to the young man who's an ex-Marine. Everybody's young to me. He's in his 40s.
Anthony, at ease, right?
Yes. And until I talked to Anthony, I didn't realize how hard that was. Well, he's created a niche product for that marketplace. Now, owners who want to think about the intersection there of fiercely independent red state owners who can be offered the opportunity to provide their home to American soldiers. Mm-hmm. Son of a bitch, is that not a great idea?
Who are getting it covered?
Yes,
that's like a triple win.
Yeah, it's a triple win. So that's a niche that Anthony has found, and I think it's a very compelling niche. I think there are going to be niches. I mean, One Fine Stays tried to do this, but I think they did it in a completely wrong-headed way. But there are going to be places that are pure. I think there is now going to be time for pure luxury, because luxury is in the eye of the beholder. But there are people who don't want to be associated with the people who would have them as associates, right? To paraphrase Groucho Marx. So I think you're going to start seeing niches emerge. There's also enough business for HomeAway and Vrbo to stay exactly like it is, because property managers now don't represent hundreds of thousands of properties. They represent millions of properties.
You led perfectly into my next sort of line of questioning, which was niches and specifically the biggest areas for opportunities for independent owners and managers. The environment and properties and businesses that are conscious and have some mechanisms of sustainability built in, being one, pet friendly,
yes,
special needs, wheelchair accessible homes. You literally can't find something like that currently. So is that, like, in your opinion, the biggest area for opportunity?
I think we have to define the level of opportunity. Okay. I think that if you're trying to build $1 billion business, a unicorn that you're going to take public, I think the berths there are all fully occupied. Are there individual entrepreneurs who could build very profitable lifestyle businesses that they can pass to their children, much like property managers passed from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s? They just passed it down to their children. I think that you could run, for example, a special needs website, because there are a number of us. I have a child with Down syndrome, and there are a number of us who would love to find that website, especially if you have a kid with autism. You really want to find the right website that understands what you need to see in a listing before you can risk taking your child there. So yes, that's a niche. I think there are niches about value. There are going to be niches about places. That these are the 50,000 best beach homes in the world. There's a business model. Get selected. Be editorial selected. I just don't see those as billion-dollar market cap companies. I see them as profitable businesses. But there'll be a lot of those because owners who get lost on Airbnb and HomeAway, Vrbo, old habits die hard.
But I am impressed at your fluency with that new word, verbo.
Well, they paid $4 billion. They can name it what they want. The notion here is that those businesses are going to exist because those owners are not getting what they need from the big sites, and they're paying more and more.
Folks, listen carefully here. If you're one of these players who Carl's talking about, who's not necessarily looking for the next billion-dollar unicorn, but rather your magic zone, your lifestyle business that makes profit and affords you the chance to watch sunsets and spend time with your kids and do what you love, your sweet spot, there is great power in that focus.
I have a very good friend, Glenn Fogel, who runs Booking.com, and he came into this space. I'm on the board of Hostelworld, which is, a different type of travel. And and those two companies compete head to head, except Hostelworld can make money on hostels and Booking.com can't. There's just not enough take rate in it for Booking.com. There's a great take rate in it for Hostelworld because it is organized around that industry. So yes, I believe you will start to see for owners other opportunities to associate yourself with a brand or an image or a thing.
We've talked about how the personality of a professionally done vacation rental business is key. We've talked about how niches are huge areas for opportunity. We've talked about control of one's business, making a lifestyle business that gives you more than just income, but something you can enjoy, something that gives you purpose, something you can pass down to your children. Is it possible that all of these, what I call limited edition dynamics, which is to say they do not scale, is it possible that these limited edition dynamics of the vacation rental movement just don't jive with giant corporations and going mainstream? Is it possible this is a forever fragmented or decentralized movement?
Possible. But I think that we're forgetting the other elephant in the room, and that's Google.
Okay.
Because at some point, one of the reasons people go to Airbnb and go to Vrbo and Expedia and Booking.com is because that's where all the inventory is. If you are able to do searches through Google that get you to Anthony's site, we were talking about Anthony earlier, or that get you to the site of the 20,000 most interesting beach houses in the world,
or the gay-friendly vacation rentals, or the whatever it is.
Exactly. And if you can get there by having traffic driven to a consolidating site, what individual owners never really understood from when we were talking with them is that Google wasn't ever going to be sending a link or sending traffic to your individual home website because you simply don't have enough traffic to come up to ever be relevant to Google.
Enough content, right?
To have enough content, correct. And so you need it to be at a larger site. I don't think that just because you are putting together a listing of the 20,000 most interesting beach houses in the world, you wouldn't also advertise on HomeAway, did it again, Vrbo and Airbnb, simply because you're in business and you need to drive a lot of traffic to these owners. The individual owner may only want to book 10 times a year, but he needs someone to help him reach and organize. Google may be able to perfect that because they have all the travel, or they have all the users. So it's one of these things that things will evolve. I think you're sensing, Matt, and I share your sensibility, is that the models today are lacking. There's something wrong with them that is not getting the top suppliers get more traffic, but that's not serving the customer or the host,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of one or two houses. So something is not aligning, and it's because there's just so much. And this is different than OTAs and hotels. I think there are only still less than 250,000 individual hotels in the world. We're talking tens of millions of vacation homes at this point, all individually owned. And that some of them are managed by a group. But when you've got that kind of scale, you're going to have to find organizing principles that bring groups together of like-minded properties. And it's no longer enough to just be a vacation rental. I think you're going to have to be a vacation rental, like you were talking about earlier, a gay-friendly vacation rental, a vacation rental for that is oriented towards young families. So all of our houses are child-proofed and child-locked, and there are no uncovered swimming pools and all that sort of stuff. You can find enough inventory now to make that claim. So it's just not satisfying for owner or traveler to not find the right house. And there's just so much, it's hard to find the right house. I'm frustrated, and I'm one of the leaders in the industry. The way I travel by vacation rental these days is I call my friends and say, I'd like to come to
Yeah.
such and such. Where should I go?
Right. That's what we do too. But the majority of travelers, they don't have that luxury. It's a crapshoot for them.
It's a crapshoot. And I want to get back to those days where I can find, I used to call it surfing. It's almost house porn. I like to go look at stuff and look at the houses, and they were all different and unique, and they are still, but the experience has been so homogenized. I'm not a big fan. I still book through VRBO a lot. I don't book through Airbnb as much, but that's because I just don't go to cities.
We've talked about a lot of the aspects of this industry that have changed since 2005. What do we have to keep reminding ourselves as the professional property owners and the professional property managers? What are the things that will never change, in your opinion?
The things that are never going to change in my mind is the joy that travelers get when they walk in to the right place and have that experience. They're not renting a home as much as they are building a memory.
You just gave me goosebumps there. That's some vacation rental porn right there.
Right there. That's what people want, is that they want to use vacation rentals, and they want to use homes as a way to bond with their family. And their families are no longer just a wife, two kids, grandma and grandpa. The families are the families you knew in college. They are the six guys that take bike trips every year in some unique location. What they're building, what will never change, is that in a way that hotels cannot approach, vacation rentals and host allow memories to form around the place. I'll tell you my favorite memory. My kid's favorite memory is actually of the worst vacation home we ever stayed in. It was on Moose Pond Lake in Maine, and it had not been touched in 40 years. The staircase was so scary, I was afraid for the kids to go up it alone. They are 35 and 30 now, and when you ask them about vacations, they remember it's that house, because the memory of all of us there together laughing about how did we end up here is still something that's etched in their heads. So I think that's what vacation rentals do that other modes of travel can't approach. And that is, we are the makers of memories. And if we remember that, yeah, that is never going to change.
I think that's something that every successful vacation rental professional uses as their litmus test. Even if it's not been a good financial year, you have these moments that you curated something so meaningful that it will last these people, this family, this group, a lifetime. That's a very powerful benefit of a business.
Absolutely. And when you touch people's lives, I mean, we all think about how we do that. We get to touch people in this industry. We get to touch people's lives for the better. And what they remember about us is when we don't do a good job, they know about it. It goes to their brand, it goes to a property manager's brand, especially, and people don't suffer in silence any longer. So the notion that what you've got to do is live up to the pictures in your ad is very important because those pictures represent a memory that's already beginning to form. And when you jar that, you can lose customers, you can lose, your place in line for future customers. It's just critical to remember that it starts with the ad. And now that we've made it easier and easier and easier to book online throughout this industry, the stakes are higher because you no longer get the chance in advance to start gauging how good of experience, how does my house really tie to what these people want. In the early days of HomeAway, owners used to tell us that they would often decide my house isn't the right house for this person. And they'd tell them that. And they'd say, you might want to try my other neighbor because you need a pool with a child guard on it. I don't have one. But Johnny Smith does. And his number on VRBO is this. Here's his email address. Go look at him. People used to be able to make sure they could tie those expectations. And now it's all done, especially with millennials. They want to book online, everything. They want to do everything online. And now your first chance to make that memory and that impression is when they're about to push their key card number into the door.
Do we have any idea of the category awareness of vacation rentals right now?
I don't have current data on that. I can tell you that when we started HomeAway in 2004, when we did our research, the awareness that you could rent a vacation home was less than 4%.
Wow.
Of the traveling public. And by the time we sold it, I remember that stat was actually in the deck, and there was a 35% awareness of vacation homes as a meaningful source of lodging. So it grew a lot. I would imagine right now, and this is my speculation, but after the last year of the pandemic, I imagine the awareness of vacation homes approaches 90% of the traveling public.
Wow.
Because it was the only way you could travel.
I'm curious if this experience ever happens to you. I'll be like in an Uber or I'll meet somebody new for the first time and I'll tell them that I work in the vacation rental sector and they are pretty confused still. And then they'll say, oh, like an Airbnb.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you have that experience.
Oh, I have it all the time.
And what your visceral reaction to that is.
Well, I think that's a fault. And again, with all due respect to Brian Chesky, Airbnb is not a vacation rental. It's just not. And it is a shared experience. But the vast majority of Airbnb properties are still primary homes that the owner or tenant moves out of so that you can move into their home. And while that's an interesting experience, it's not the same as moving into a dedicated vacation rental. And I think that I blame HomeAway significantly for allowing Airbnb to define what a vacation rental was because I think we've done a disservice to the public and we've done a disservice to the property managers who really manage homes in a way that they can be unique and wonderful, but also yours. When you're there for your week in a dedicated vacation rental, that's your house.
So how would you do that? In hindsight, you said you feel like you failed a little bit. How would you do that?
I don't know. The challenge that we had, that everybody had, was that you could not beat the Airbnb publicity machine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Brian Chesky was, I can say this because I'm so much older than him, but he's cute as a button, and he was very, very self-effacing when he first got started, and he was so earnest about everything, and he was good copy, and what I wasn't anticipating, and what I personally misjudged, was every bit of negative publicity they got only made them stronger. And it made them more cemented into what an Airbnb was. And to many people, an Airbnb became, an outlaw. How dare you try to keep me from renting my back room? These guys let me do that and let me rent my whole apartment when I'm not using it. And they are the man of the people. And I think that I looked at it and said, gee, they are getting so much bad publicity. And we frankly we would never have been able to go into their space. I don't think people talk about that as much. People often say to me, why didn't you start renting rooms? And the main reason is that we were public by then. And you can't, as a public company, knowingly violate laws. You just can't. So I would have been shut down. I mean, the SEC would have come after. I would have had all sorts of problems if we had done something and the state of New York sued us for being illegal.
So do you think that any press is good press? Do you think it was a conscious thing there to say, okay, we're just going to accept this and roll with it?
Honestly, I don't know if it started out as conscious, but I knew their PR team because we had a lot of interaction, and it was absolutely any press is good press from the PR team. Absolutely.
And now a word from our sponsors. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation. But instead of me telling you how great I think they are or reading off some kind of script, here's Karen and John Bobie of Sunset Properties.
Point Central, no other way. We tried other locks, and the Point Central locks blows all the other companies.
We did a test. We did 6 of every one available.
And because we're at the very end of the island, we have limited internet. We have limited, as you know, cell service.
Access to teammates.
Exactly. And so therefore, and then you also have a harsh environment here with the salt water and the wind and, all that other good stuff out there. So we wanted to make sure that our locks stood up to the environment and that they were always pretty much, 90% ready to rock and roll and not losing
and
Point
connection.
Central
won the competition.
Hands down. No connections lost.
Like we had attrition on the others in 3 months.
Attrition, literally the things were dying.
Things did stop working.
I could not have said that any better myself. If you'd like to learn more about Point Central, head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB. They're now accepting property managers with less than 5 properties, which gives everybody the excuse to get a little bit more connected. And Breezeway, a property care and operations platform whose founder, Jeremiah Gall, was on our podcast explaining the following very powerful strategic advice.
I think it should be clear to the guest a lot of the work that goes into preparing this property. I think it should be clear to the owners in particular. I think owners are missing an appreciation for a lot of the work that managers do to actually create this experience. And I think owners need to understand that more, and that if managers, this is part of our mission at Breezeway, which is if we can help managers more transparently demonstrate to the owners the amount of work and the touches on the property that they do, the preventative maintenance, the asset protection, all the work that's going into property care, they should be able to charge more for those services because it's indispensable. You cannot provide that experience unless that owner themselves is dedicated to self-managing their property in a really highly detailed manner.
If that resonates with you, head over to breezeway.io/VRMB. When you sign up there, you'll get a free implementation service, which is valued at $1,000. Let's get back into it. So what does that mean for like the vacation rental professionals, let's say, of any given community, any destination, who are trying to do things really professionally? They're trying to uphold the absolute highest standards. They're contributing back to their local neighborhood, et cetera. But meanwhile, they've got these hobbyists Airbnb-ing their homes on the side, making a mess, whether it's noise, whether it's parking issues, whether it's trash issues, just not taking it seriously.
Matt.
Have I opened a new can of worms?
No, you haven't opened a new can of worms, but you sound like a property manager in 2004.
Well, my question is if giving negative attention to this kind of thing is actually fueling the beast, do I instead ignore it and focus only on the things that I can control?
Okay, that's good. No,
I turn the corner there at the end.
Yeah, I think what you have to do is provide a better experience. If you can get someone into your home, I mean, one of the individual problems that every property manager's got is that Carl Shepard, have gone back to the same location on a vacation, maybe 6 times in my life, and I'm 70 years old. I mean, my whole thing is I keep moving. I want to see everything, right? So you can have all the brand you want of your professionally managed property in Orlando, Florida, where, thank God, my children are old enough. I no longer have to go back to Disney, and I have no grandchildren yet. But it wouldn't matter how good your brand name is in Orlando. I'm not going back there to find you. So that is the reason you have sites coming up like Vacasa and Turnkey and Red Door, the multi-market property managers. They should be able to give a pure point of demarcation against an Airbnb host, an individual host. But don't discount the fact that a large number of Airbnb hosts are really property managers, and with up to 100 properties.
Right.
They're in the same business the property managers have. Mm-hmm. They just have a harder exercise unless the homes are dedicated. In many cases, there are. You ask about something, which was also the problem that when I look back at things that I just didn't understand well. I went to stay in an Airbnb. As a matter of fact, I did 2 things to try to make people at HomeAway to understand it. We had a conference once, and Brian Chesky would love to hear this, but I had everybody rent an Airbnb. We're going to go to this city, and we're all going to rent Airbnbs. And let's do that. And now we're going to talk about what this experience is.
Love it.
And we did that, and at one point we were having a sales retreat. That's why we were there, and we would go to one of the houses and we'd have meetings, right? And it was fun. It was fun. The host from this Airbnb opened the door, came into the house, the apartment, which was dedicated. saw us all sitting there, said, "Oh, I left this," and he went. I won't be a minute. He was there for 20 minutes, and when he left, I just looked at people and said, "We don't do this." That guy would get shot in a vacation rental. You just walked into a vacation rental using your key. The food he had put blue painter's tape around food with a sign that said, "Don't eat this." And I thought, this is totally bizarre. and I rented an Airbnb for my family. And Chesky's going to send me nasty notes after he hears this. But I rented one in San Francisco. Beautiful apartment. I rented it off of HomeAway. We check in. I pull up. I'm parking and emptying the car. My wife and my son go into the apartment and get started. And I'm unloading the car. Suzanne comes out and she says, "Where in the hell have you brought me?" And I go up in, it's somebody's apartment. And I just hadn't realized that we had those apartments on HomeAway. So I called the owner up and I say, is this your house?
I'm in the closet.
And he said, "Yeah, I'm over at my boyfriend's house." And it was like, okay, but this is not what I wanted. So now I'm going around and, I've got a 13-year-old son, and I'm going around putting things in drawers that I'm not necessarily interested in my son seeing. And that's just not what you ever have happen with a dedicated vacation rental. It just doesn't happen. So I think that people, by letting that be defined as a vacation rental, we have blurred the line. So what a property manager that's really in the dedicated vacation rental property management business needs to start doing, in my view, is to make sure that everyone knows that, you can see some antecedents of it right now. This is how we clean. This is how we verify everything is clean. This is how many hours are between you and the next guest.
This is how safe our properties have been certified.
This is how safe are. So there's something there that I think, Matt, they need to keep going on. And it needs to be, this is dedicated to you. This isn't someone else's full-time home. When you check into this, you can be assured that you're alone. There are things that we can start talking about, but a vacation rental is not someone's primary home, except now it is, because we let that happen as an industry. I take my responsibility of that. I did not fight that enough at the time. And with all, honesty, I don't think Chesky set out to be a vacation rental. Chesky was setting out to be something completely different. He and Nate had a vision of a world where people can share their space for additional income, which improves both people's lives, right? Both the host and the traveler. And it was the traveler's getting a good deal, and the host is getting, he had this image that he used to paint of the artist who, couldn't stay in Brooklyn unless she rented her back bedroom. But she gets to stay in Brooklyn and it improves her art, which is probably 100% in his viewpoint. But suddenly that became a vacation rental. And there's all sorts of reasons for that, but that would take a whole other podcast to get into that. But it all comes down to take rate. The reason Airbnb has moved increasingly into professionally managed properties and individual dedicated vacation home is because they can charge more a night for them, and their percentage is higher.
And from the professional's perspective, what I heard between the lines there is the professionals need to explain what it is that makes them professional. And that's maybe obvious to a lot of folks, but it's rarely articulated as well as it should. And I think this is just a nice opportunity as we come out of this unbelievable year to really hit that reset button and let's explain clearly who we are, what we do, why we're different, and why we think you're a good fit, and maybe why you're not a good fit, maybe why you'd prefer an Airbnb or a Marriott.
Right. And while and take that to the other side, why this homeowner may not be a good fit for my brand any longer, but it's a perfect fit for another brand image. There are things you can do, but it is a constant management challenge. And I think for professionals, to take this all the way back to professionals, they've got to start acting like professionals, and they can't be roach motels. You can't have a property for 30 years that you never change the carpet in, right? Uh, and I've been in some of those, especially at Padre Island and on the Texas coast. You've got to start looking and say, when my customer, who I paid so much to get, and who I hope gives me a great review, and while they may not be coming back to Baton Rouge for 20 years, when they say, I had this great stay in Baton Rouge and it was provided by Bob's Vacation Rentals, Bob gets that traffic directly as opposed to paying Verbo or Airbnb for it. That's how you start building businesses. And I think they've got to look at this and say, everything has to be in the image I'm creating. So I don't think homeowners can brand individually. Certainly every property manager can say, these are my brand promises, and everything has to be aligned.
Why don't you think property owners can brand?
Because I don't think that property owners, individual property owners, have enough
Brain power?
It's not brain power. It's that there's not a demand for them to have a brand. If you've only go renting for 12 weeks a year, that's 12 SKUs. How do you build a brand on 12 SKUs a year?
Well, you build it around your personality, which is authentic and original and real. That's the tone.
I totally get that. But to me, brand is all about repeat usage. And I just don't know. There are a segment of people. I think the Outer Banks of North Carolina is a great example of places that people go for a week every year. I mean, the Mid-Atlantic states, for reasons that I will never understand, because I've been to the Outer Banks, they just love it and they go every year. Those people can build a brand with their repeat guest. But I guess I'm thinking of a brand in a way that you can now market across market widely, which is different than I'm just going to be a great host and get great reviews.
Right.
That brand image comes across in your review, but that comes across on your page on VRBO or HomeAway, right? It doesn't. You're not going to go out and market that on Google. It goes to, I had a great experience here. When I'm talking about a brand, when I'm using that term, I'm thinking about the idea that I have seen this property manager's name, and I'm going to use Turnkey and Picasa. I think they are building broad-based brands. That's one of the things they're trying to do. And that's because I'd like to stay in another Turnkey property. So first I'm going to go check, does Turnkey have any properties where I'm going? And if they do, I already have an expectation there. And if they don't, then I have to start over just again. And I type in vacation rentals, Omaha, Nebraska, and see what's there.
When I use the word brand, I think of it more along the lines of the relationship that you form with the other side. And something that I've heard throughout all of this amazing conversation today is that if you are building a meaningful relationship with your customer in a way that they remember you, that you do stand out
right.
for whatever reason, you have effectively built your brand. You have really something that is kind of like the precious resource of our industry, and that is that relationship. Even if they don't come back to stay with you, maybe they'll send a friend, maybe they will refer you to others. And it's just a nice way of, I think, for owners and managers of all sizes to have something that they can sink their teeth into that's not corporate, it's not outside of their skill set. Brand building is relationship building for me.
Well, I think guess what we may be coming at it from just different scale of businesses, but when I'm thinking about a brand, I think that what is my brand recall going to be when I decide as a consumer to do something? That brand recall is probably not going to be at the owner level. I think it's going to be at the Airbnb level or the Verbo level if you're an individual owner. But I think professional managers can, and I know that all the properties at a professional manager are owned by an owner, but the owner doesn't have an interaction with the guest in that situation.
Right.
I think that when I'm looking at brand for the property managers, that's where people I think can get repeat guests because when I say, I rented this house at South Padre Island from Padre Island Rentals and it had a really great experience, I can either make Padre Island Rentals a little bit of money and send them business, or I can send business away if I say, I rented from Padre Island Rentals and the house was a disaster. And those two things, or Padre Island Rentals, and I had trouble checking in, or whatever it's going to be, or that is negative. Negatives far outweigh positives in terms of reviews. Mm-hmm. So my point is, you can build a great. We should all be all about building experiences, and we need to sit. Our property managers need to sit their summer staffs down or their winter ski season staffs down and say, this is what we expect from you that is in line with our brand. We greet every guest every day. We make sure that this piece of this leave behind is on their pillow when they, whatever. This is your job as a housekeeper. This is your job as a check-in specialist. This is your job as a maintenance guy, because maintenance makes or kills an experience. If you have a maintenance issue in a vacation rental, that is an opportunity to either submit the love of the category forever in that traveler's mind, or to kill it for the rest of the time.
Yeah, well put. Wow. I love the way that you phrased all that. I've never heard that viewpoint, that perspective before, but it makes so much sense. And Carl, I want to wind down here because I think I could go on asking you questions forever. With one final question, because I think folks who are listening at this point are pretty confident in your instincts here. Is there anything to keep an eye out for in terms of mergers or acquisitions in the next year or two that you think maybe people aren't thinking about just yet?
I can say that I believe coming out of the pandemic in travel in general, you're going to see a lot of M&A activity. Some of that will be driven by opportunity. A lot of it will be driven by financial needs, because we have in the travel industry right now, we have a lot of very good businesses who are very cash constrained. So there are going to be some marriages for convenience and marriages for to stay alive. So I do expect to see some consolidation in the next 12 to 18 months of property managers. I see that happening. I don't think you're going to see the OTAs too active in M&A. I think that they have got their own fish to fry, and they've got Expedia, I know, needs to be very focused on getting its hotel business back on track. So does Booking. So those guys are probably not going to be as active in M&A. In the property management space, I think there's opportunity for like-minded property managers to say, are we better as a fit together? And that can be to take a larger market share of an individual market, like, name a market. And it can also be, should we be banding together to create synergies between areas of the country, that we can now provide you beach beach and sun, ski, um, mountain biking, uh, whatever it is that property managers may want to look at. Who is a great complement for me, and is there a good merger opportunity there? Cash is going to be one of the major things that are keeping people that drive M&A this year.
It's so cool to hear. For me, this is really the first time we've talked at length, and it's really neat for me to hear how basically the whole inflection point of your vacation rental journey started because you went to somebody's home for a physical poker tournament, and that was a differentiator between you and your journey versus the Expedia at the moment. And I think that's just such a great reminder for all of us that it does boil down to showing up and being ourselves and being genuine. I think that is really the core DNA of every great business in our space.
I would add, you don't know what you don't know, so listen. Because if I went there, Brian and I went there for one purpose, and by listening, we discovered a hidden industry about to explode.
What a fantastic note to end on. Thanks for listening to today's interview. If you'd like to download a full transcript of this conversation along with links to resources that we mentioned, head over to VRMB Communities and click register. Our community is for independent owners and managers who choose to leverage collective wisdom when the intelligence of a group of individuals is smarter than any given one. No reinventing the wheel here, just copying the most effective marketing tactics out there and building a more diverse vacation rental marketing portfolio. We like to think we have the world's most thoughtful vacation rental professionals all under one virtual roof. That's community.vrmb.com. Click register.